Greetings. So today my guest is Dale Allen-Rowse. Hi, Dale.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm really good. Happy to be here. Thanks for so much for having me on.
We met on Facebook a while ago, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we've been
Yeah,
kind of following each other for a bit now.
that's kind of cool. And you have a connection because you're one of your hats is a real estate trainer in some way, education, right?
Yes, definitely. I've been doing real estate education ever since 2011, and it's also kind of part of, my whole writing books and everything, the coaching, it's all part of the whole package.
So why don't you give me a list of all your titles of what you do?
Yeah. So author is really my passion. Like I love writing. I write almost every day. So I have my books. I'm also a real estate trainer, like we talked about. I also have a brand called the Prefab Guy, which is a business that helps people after the LA fires, kind of with guidance in terms of rebuilding. I'm a husband, and I. I don't know. I think in terms of like the businesses, like the coaching and the real estate is really where I'm at right now.
So tell us a little about your books briefly. Well, we're going to put all of the info on the show in the episode notes, but tell me what's going on with the books.
Yeah. So how I actually arrived to the books is really like the whole story, and it kind of ties it all
Right.
together. So why I actually started writing the books was I got really sick, and so I was a really big real estate agent in Los Angeles, and I was, chasing the money and the success and all the things that we were supposed to be doing, only to discover that the stress of that, like the internalized stress within my body, was really kind of short circuiting my nervous system. So I was first diagnosed with generalized dystonia or stiff person syndrome in 2014, and that really like changed my life. I mean, completely. I was so ill that I couldn't really make a living, and it's the same disease that Celine Dion has. So a lot of people are aware of it now because of that, and it's the same neurological condition, which is very debilitating because it short circuits your brain. It's kind of like your brain is losing its ability to communicate fully with your body, right? So it
Oh,
can affect your speech, it can affect the way you move. Some parts of your body will stiffen up. That's why it's called stiff person syndrome. And other parts you won't be able to move at all. And so it's this short circuiting of the motherboard of your mind, which then makes it like some parts are working, some parts are overworking, some parts aren't working at all, and it just becomes really complicated. So when COVID hit, I had been dealing with that for 6 years, and that was ultimately when I decided to sit down and write my book. And the book was really an interesting process because it allowed me to put my problems on a fictional character and advise him and direct his life kind of like from an arm's length transaction, right? So that I could help that character, who is me essentially, I could help that character evolve and move their life in a direction while learning about what was happening there. And still to this day, I say that, my writing is where I go to learn. And it's through the process of channeling information and practicing what's called automatic writing, which is what I use to write the books. And it's an interesting way to learn about yourself. It's an interesting way to, just kind of find new answers that maybe you of your thinking mind hasn't thought about. So that's kind of was the genesis of writing the books, is I was just really looking for answers. I was trying to save my life. Oh, there it is. That's awesome. So, that's kind of how it all started. And then the books itself took me on another full journey of learning about, because the books are really what led me to shamanism, which is the vehicle that I really used in order to cure myself of that neurological disorder.
wow. Pretty amazing. So I read the book yesterday.
Thank you.
We met a
Wow.
few days ago. I ordered the book. I read it real quick.
I
So I probably
appreciate
missed
that
some
so
parts of it,
much.
but I hung in there. I think I read for 8 or 10 hours yesterday.
Wow. Thank
And
you.
I did love it. And I fell in love with Jack, the main character.
Mm-hmm.
He's very cool. All right, but let's rewind a little bit. So let's
Sure.
tell a little about your story. So where you grew up. Uh, you mentioned you're married. For my followers here, he's not married to a lady,
No.
right?
I've
You're
been
married.
married twice now, and neither time to a lady.
Was she female and just not a lady, or no? No, I get it. So we're talking. We're both gays, of course. All my followers know I am, but just so we establish that. So talk about your growing up, your experience. We had kind of similar crazy backgrounds, I think, in a little bit of way. But
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm in my 50s now. So I was growing up, born in 1970. And I was born just outside of Seattle, but raised just outside of Vancouver. So Pacific Northwest, through and through. My
we're
book's
we're
really
outside Seattle.
outside of Seattle. I'm in Tacoma. I was born in Tacoma.
Okay, yeah, I know it. Okay, because I
Yeah.
was up in the Northwest for my adult life. So
Yeah. Yeah. And then I grew up in a tiny town called Coquitlam. In British Columbia. And, it was your typical family. My father was a Baptist minister. My mom was a substitute school teacher. It was very not original.
was that your father, your biological, or your stepfather?
So the stepfather in the character was not actually a relative. So, you know what I mean? Because in the book, there's a stepfather character that, has a big influence in my life, but he was not a relative. He was a stranger.
Your actual father was your biological father. Okay,
Yes.
got it.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So I stayed there until, I was, well, at the time I was 10 years old when I started dancing. Right. And that really was the thing that took me away from, my family because I left home at a very young age to join a professional ballet school, like you do.
How old were you when you left?
I was 16. Yeah.
And your Baptist family let you go to dance school?
I mean, trust me, it was a big deal. And there was much conversation as to whether that was something I should be doing with my life or not, in the Baptist circles, especially back then. Boys doing ballet was, really kind of not okay. So, I was having to break down all these barriers, even back then, in terms of just helping myself and my community like come out and like get more comfortable with people who aren't going to accounting school. Yeah, I was going to ballet school. Like everyone just get used to it, but it was such a big deal back
And
then. But
where
I
was the
left it.
school? Where was the school?
I went from Vancouver to the Royal Winnipeg Ballet School. And so they shipped me off at 16, and I was like, yes, I got to spend the rest of my life with boys in tights. That was like the whole goal.
So you knew you were gay at that point?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I was very clear that's where I was headed.
Did your parents know you were gay at that point?
I don't know. There's a lot of speculation as to whether my Baptist minister father was gay. So, things like that just weren't really talked about or brought up. I don't know whether, I mean, how could they not? I mean, hello. But there was a lot of denial back then and, just not a lot of good information. So whether they thought I was gay or not, well, I mean, I eventually did come out to them when I was 19 and that all but essentially ended my relationship with them.
And it's still that way today?
Well, they're both dead now, so
Yeah. Okay.
it doesn't matter. But it never got particularly good. I mean, it got better, but I also, I mean, they really disowned me to the point where they weren't sending me birthday cards and Christmas cards. And I'm in my early 20s, 20 years old. And, just dealing with that level of rejection from my family based off of, me being honest with them about that. But I knew it was coming. I had prepared. I knew that I couldn't come out to them until I was financially secure. So I made sure that, I took care of business before taking that leap of faith.
So from the ballet school, then what?
So yeah, I was in the ballet school for 3 years. I graduated at 19 and then got a job in Montreal where, I mean, you want to talk about like gay city. Oh man, like going from Winnipeg to Montreal, like that was like big time.
Montreal is on my bucket list to go see.
It's really fabulous. It's really fabulous. And so, my books deal a lot in like these Canadian cities and my life in Montreal, and like all of this really bleeds and colors, like even the French language, is really evident in fact, there's a lot of characters who only speak French in my books, and that's on purpose, right? Because I like to show people sometimes like a limitation, and people who only speak one language are very limited in their understanding of what language is, right? So I really play with that and helping people understand their own, boundaries and inability to sometimes see the blind spot that is there. And so those are just concepts and stuff that I play
Do
with.
you speak French?
Yeah.
Okay, you're going as my tour guide to France next time.
Oh, great. Yeah. Yeah. No, it was funny because I was just like immersed in it. Once I moved there, and again, this was back in the early 90s. So it was still pretty French. I mean, there were a lot of people on the streets who would not speak English to you, type of thing, or local, people who work in the shops, get annoyed with your horrible attempt at, the French language, like they're offended.
Well, it's really weird because I have a friend he's a barber now, but he's in I don't know, he's like in the east coast of Canada, and it's not like really French speaking there, right?
Really, just Quebec is French speaking, but like if you go all the way to the east of the Maritimes, that's not particularly.
But
French.
what happened is he had before he became a barber, he had some government related job, and they let him go because he didn't speak French way over there. It was really weird. This was probably 5 years ago, maybe.
Wow. Okay.
So that it was pretty weird. So it's like everything is English and French, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just got thrown into it. And so I picked up the language pretty quickly. And for anybody who's trying to learn a new language, I really suggest just go out and go drinking. Like that was the best way for me to learn how to speak the language, because it really, just allowed me to be free form without like worrying about all the mistakes I was making and things like this. And so I highly recommend learning a new language while drinking.
The immersive technique, right? Wow. Yeah, I one of my recent podcast guests. He's a film writer director. He's in Barcelona right now, but he's going to school to learn Spanish, and they don't speak English there. You're like dumped into it. That's it.
Immersion. Yeah.
But he said it's working. So
yeah.
Seems
because you have to start thinking in the language, and that's what's really interesting is when your brain starts to communicate in a second language and you start to dream in another language. Like there's a whole new range of color that becomes available to you, especially like as a writer, like because you become aware of words that don't exist in English and cannot be translated. And once you start to play with that, level of language, it really gets interesting, at least for me.
The English language is pretty fascinating. I mean, some words we have like 12 different things, all these crazy meanings. People trying to learn English go nuts on that. Mm-hmm. And yet there are other things where we have no word for it.
Right.
It's like, hello.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So move on. All
right. So from Montreal, I moved to the States. That was the last Canadian city I lived in. I moved to Alabama. Can you imagine?
Why?
Because I got a job there with Ballet South. And I did 8 months there and then moved to Florida, where I did 7 years with Ballet Florida, did a bunch of things, then went to Pacific Northwest Ballet, and I was with them for a while. And from there, I got the job with the Broadway show Fosse, about Bob Fosse's life. And so that show was really big back then. That was 2001 when I got that job. And so I was on the road.
The location of that? The location?
It was the tour. It was the national tour.
Okay, the tour.
Yeah. Yeah, so I did that for a couple months, and then I got the Celine Dion job in Las Vegas. There were a bunch of us actually from Fosse, because the Fosse tour was ending, and we knew it was ending, so we were all like searching for jobs. And there was a posting for this Celine Dion job in Las Vegas. And so we thought I would go check that out. And so we all went and auditioned. And there were 4 of us actually who went from Fosse over to Celine's A New Day in Vegas, which opened in March of 2003.
So all 4 of you got the job working with her?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's funny actually. In 2 days from now, we're having a big reunion. The show closed in 2007, so it's now 2025. It's been a while since we've spent a lot of time together. So there's a big reunion that's happening in just outside of Las Vegas at a special property that we're all going to. So it should be quite interesting.
Now, will she be there?
That hasn't been revealed yet. I don't know yet. So pay attention to social media. If you see a picture with me and her.
Okay. So you were there with her for how many years?
Yeah, I was there from '02 when I got hired to May of '05, and that's when I officially retired from performing as a full-time career and went into real estate.
Why real estate?
Because I was artistically satisfied, and now I was ready to make some money.
And so that's when you moved to LA.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I was in Vegas doing real estate for a while until the market crash of '08.
Okay.
And there, I went back to school for a few months in Utah and then moved to LA. That was the kind of the trajectory. But yeah, I was hired by Keller Williams to be their director of education. So I moved to Hollywood and started teaching real estate agents how to be real estate agents.
And you did that after the crash?
Yeah.
Wow. I wish I'd bought a bunch of houses then.
Right? I know. I mean, that's ultimately why I left Las Vegas, because the houses that I was selling, and like some of the condos were going for $20,000, $30,000. And the commission on that I mean, the work was the same, but the commission
Right.
was just so little that I couldn't really make a living.
Yeah.
So I just gave it up and headed out of state.
Wow. So now you're Keller Williams in LA.
So yeah, in 2011, I was in LA at Keller Williams, and I was teaching agents, and I was, selling a whole bunch, and I was doing the really big life thing, the whole LA, got to be impressive, got to be on the go, got to have money, got to do all the things, got to have, all
Did you
that.
have a fancy car?
Yeah, and then my health was like, actually, no, you're not doing any of this, and
So
that's when,
stop for a minute. So your husband's name is John, right?
yeah.
When did you meet John?
I met John in 2011. Well, we met actually, funny enough, on Facebook, and so we dated long distance before we even met in person for like 4 months because I was in Utah and there was like no dating material up there, And he had dated already everybody in LA, and I knew I was moving to LA, so he was ready to import. I was ready to be imported.
So when you were doing the real estate education thing, was John in the picture at that point?
Yes. Yeah.
And you were living with him at that point?
Right. Yes.
Okay. All right. Got that.
Yeah. Then, really, like, side note, this is a really kind of interesting story. I bought a rental property in LA where my tenant ended up getting murdered, and I was like the one who found him and had to put the guy away. And it ended up being an episode of Real Murders of Los Angeles. If you go to like this last season, 2024, the season finale is my episode, and it's called the Hollywood Pen Pal Murder. And that was the whole, and so I'm on it, so that was like an interesting little, jaunt that
I don't know the show. So was it like reality TV and you're actually on there?
Yeah.
Were you on the TV program?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, no, they came to my house and filmed for a full day interviewing me for this TV show.
Wow.
Because it was my tenant who, I mean, this is the story. So I was having a nice friendship with this older man who was also a real estate client, right? And we would hang out, and he lived alone, and he was super lonely. And so, like, I'd go for lunch with him once a week, or, I'd hang out with him once a week. And he was giving me, he gave me 2 real estate deals. So I'm like, okay, like I'm, just it's nice older guy.
Right.
He sells me his place and then wants to rent it back from me, which is fine. I mean, I'm happy to own a place in Los Angeles. Right. So I get the title of that. But what I don't know that he's doing is that he's having pen pal relationships with men in prison. And when they get out of prison, he's giving them a place to stay in this condo, which is now mine.
Oops.
And then he gets himself killed because, he's hanging out with these, really unhealthy individuals who are just fresh out of prison.
Did one of the pen pals kill him?
Yes.
Or was it a friend of a pen pal?
No, one of the pen pals.
Wow.
And then on top of that, the police need me to go through all of the guy's stuff. And so I'm like searching through all these like lurid letters and things between like my tenant and all these guys in prison with photos and everything. And trust me, I mean, I am no prude, but this was like an education.
Wow. So how did you end up looking at that stuff? It seems like the cops would be doing that, but why did you see it?
I know, right? I had the same question. I'm like, why is this on me? Like, I know I have the key, but you guys had it locked down for days and days and days where I couldn't even access it. I mean, like, wasn't that your job? Anyhow, that's the way it went down.
So he's dead, and then did you have to get rid of all the stuff in the condo or how did that work?
Yeah, so we had to have the whole like biohazard team come in and clean and scrub because after it's a major crime scene, I mean the police and everything like tore it apart and there was that fingerprint dust everywhere and I mean it was unlivable. I mean it was destroyed. So I had to I mean I had all the carpets ripped out and everything and just fresh paint and started and then I couldn't sell it because it's a site of a notorious murder and you have to disclose that in the paperwork and having been my own agent enough times. So John and I ended up moving into the murder condo and we lived there for 3 years and then we sold it.
Do you have to disclose after 3 years? I mean, I was in real estate, but I forget.
Not after 3 years.
So it's not a material fact after that.
Correct. And we like hyper disclosed it even after, just so it wouldn't come back and bite us.
Right. Wow. You have such a dull life.
I know, right? And we're just getting started.
Wow. All right. So then you're in real estate, and then we come back to where we started, where your affliction kicks in, right?
Right. Yeah, and finding my friend murdered and having to go to the courts and like put the guy away. And then that was that was so stressful because like when they're interviewing you in the court case, they're showing on the screen like behind you that's probably 12 feet tall images of my dead friend while they're asking me questions about it. So it was like
so the whole courtroom is seeing this?
Yeah.
That's kind of weird.
I mean, it was very graphic what they were showing on the screen behind me of the crime scene while they're asking me questions. It was like, anyhow. So yes, my nervous system calls it quits. And
did he shoot him or what?
He strangled him. Well, he pushed him down the stairs and then strangled him and then dragged him back upstairs and then threw him in the tub.
Wow. Yeah. Is the guy still in prison?
Oh, yeah. I mean, because this was the second time he did it. Remember, he just had freshly got out of prison from doing the exact same thing in New York with an older guy.
Was he gay, the prison guy? Or was he just a closet case?
Oh, no, he was gay, I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
Yeah, he was just really mentally deranged. He's just not right.
Okay, so the moral of the story here is do not start a pen pal relation with prisoners, okay?
Well, then if you do, and that's fine, but just maybe don't invite them to your house as soon as they're, out of prison to give them a place to stay.
Real address, yeah. Wow. How old was the guy that got killed?
My friend?
Yeah.
He was probably 83 or so.
Oh, wow. Wow. And how old was the prisoner?
He was probably 30.
Wow.
And I hung out with him just by extension because like he was staying at my friend's house. So that like is super weird, right?
So you met the killer before he killed him?
Yeah. A few times.
Wow.
All in the family.
Okay, this is totally inappropriate, but I got to ask it. I'm asking it for my followers because I know they're questioning this. So was he hot, the prisoner, or not?
No.
He wasn't?
No, he was
clearly 30 and that's it.
There was something mentally wrong with him that just, kind of permeated off his being. He was not too bad, though. I mean,
it's so weird because, I'm sure you've seen on social media, the guy that killed the United Healthcare guy and all the gay guys think he's so hot.
Right.
Which he is, but that's a whole thing. It's so weird. Anywho, all right. So now let's move into what's next. So then that's when you start.
Right, getting dystonia.
Right.
Right. And so what happened? And
Wait,
I,
stop a minute. So did you say Celine and you both have the same thing?
yep, same thing.
Now you didn't catch it there somehow, did you? I mean, that's a
Well,
weird question, but
I don't know. I mean,
you think
it's really,
energetically you could have somehow?
yeah, I don't know. I think probably it's more that we were both, extremely high performing individuals under a
Right.
lot of stress.
Okay.
And I think those similarities may have been enough. I mean, it is genetic, and my father did have a mild form of it, so it's not a complete surprise on my side. But yeah, I mean, it just started with a little like nervous tick, right? That kind of then started to overtake my whole body.
Wow. So you're not experiencing that now. So what happened? Let's hear that story.
Yeah, I mean, so my whole healing journey after getting like so sick I couldn't make a living, right?
Right.
That is both the best thing and the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Because when you spend months at a time thinking you're going to die, or, your entire future is just no longer there.
Right.
And so that's kind of the whole story of Jack in, Journey of a Dark Shaman. Like his past is crap, his future is crap. So what do you do with that, right? Because here I am holding on to a whole bunch of PTSD from religious-based trauma of, me essentially having to escape my parents. I was planning on like leaving home from the time I was 14. I was actively plotting to get away from my parents because I knew that conversion therapy was hanging in the balance for me, right? I knew I wasn't safe. And so, you know, just fast forward to where I was with dystonia and never having really dealt with my PTSD, the whole running away issues, the not feeling safe in my own home, like the messaging that I received from my parents. Like my mother would say things to me that were so cruel that it would just absolutely take my breath away. And when you have parents like that who aren't a safe place for you, that's really, comes up a lot in my books because it really was that intersection of I'm sick, the doctors don't have any answers. Am I going to die or am I going to do something about this? And it was the opportunity for me, and I did a whole lifestyle shift where I moved to the middle of nowhere, like literally in the woods on 5 acres, and meditated for 3 hours a day, turned off the news, and just focused on resetting my vibe, resetting who I was energetically and how the
Right.
habit of me was resonating in the world to see if I couldn't change that habit into something different from being ill and not being able to walk or communicate properly. I mean, there would be, weeks I would lose access to the English language. Like it would just be deleted from the motherboard of my mind.
Wow.
And so I'm trying to speak and communicate and I don't have access to English. Like it's gone. And so just like gibberish is, I'm still thinking in English, but what's coming out is gibberish, like that kind of mental decay where, you just can't function anymore. So like I say, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. It's the worst thing that ever happened.
Wow. So all that brought you out of it or healed it?
Well, I really attribute writing and finding. So I write through this process that's really very bizarre. It's a spiritual tool that some people use. It's called automatic writing. What it is essentially is just using your subconscious instead of anything conscious. And so, through the process of really like bringing that into my life, to healing myself, to like really going like deep, because there were no answers in the external world. I searched them all. I looked to every doctor. I did all the things and still nothing was happening. And so I really went completely internal for like months and months and months and months and months. And I just really checked in with what was here. I checked in with every single limiting belief that was holding me back. I checked in with every single thought that told me I was sick. And I eradicated that from me in order to then start to build kind of neural pathways forward for myself. And having been a ballet dancer, like a classically trained ballet dancer, I really leaned into my training of what that meant for me in my physiology, right? And my association and my neural pathways with self. And so it was really a process of visualizing and like seeing myself getting better and then seeing the results starting to manifest and then really chasing the answers and the solution, right? And getting myself out of like the old neurowiring and moving myself into a whole new place. And there's nothing sanctioned by any doctor here. It was just my own, chutzpah and say so that I was going to cure myself and not hanging out with sick people, not hanging out with people who identify as ill, right? Not hanging out with people who see themselves like all these support groups and everything that they were offering were just a horror show because there was just sick person after sick person after sick person talking about how tough their life was and how this has, essentially left them with nothing. That wasn't going to be me. That wasn't going to be my story. No way. I was like, get out of my way. Yeah, I might have a couple, special care instructions, but that doesn't limit me in any way. And it was just that belief and talking that way and believing it and manifesting it in everything that I could do. And how I really learned so much about manifesting was in business school. Like that was a real surprise to me that these guys in real estate would do anything in order to make sales, even evolve in their consciousness. Like they were willing to do that in order to make a sale. And I was like, wow, these guys are chasing down like the laws of attraction and spirituality in a way that I haven't seen modeled in any church, right? And they're really getting into the big mind stuff. And they're really getting into that they themselves, in and of themselves, have the power to manifest that which they seek. Right. And it's really the power shift. And this is what happens. This is why I really started studying shamanism, is because it really showed me a way how to, in and of yourself, like affect the matrix. Because most people are being affected by the matrix and they feel weak and they feel like they don't have a say in what's happening to them. Like it's because it's happening to them. They're not happening to life. Life is happening to them. And so it's really that paradigm shift where you're affecting the matrix, it isn't affecting you.
Right. So go back to writing the book. So you said it's your subconscious giving you the message.
Yeah.
Would you equate that to the other would be your higher self?
Well, yes, very much so. And I used to
When I first heard you say that, excuse me, when I first heard you say that, I thought you were like channeling information from like out there from another entity, something.
I don't really put a label on it. Some people would call it that. Some people wouldn't. And so I leave the door wide open for whatever your belief is of what it is that I'm doing and how these books come to being and how it is that I write a book in 6 weeks. You know what I mean? With no story outline, with no pre-thought, with no nothing. And but again, I've written 11 books now. So it really is the
so
process.
How many drafts are there of the book?
One.
You're killing me.
Yeah, no, it's a complete thought, the book from beginning to end.
It's supposed to be 10 drafts.
No.
Wow.
No, I write it and then I send it to my editor and I publish it. And people just are really moved by the work because I really layer in so much of the learning that it took me, because I'm describing not what's happening to the characters. I'm describing how they're evolving past, their limiting beliefs, how they're starting to like put life into their own hands and how they're starting to gain their own personal power. And like, so you really watch them going from powerless to like ascended masters.
Right. Wow. I'd love to write books that way. So how do you get into that?
Yeah, well, I just fell into it because I didn't know anything different, right? And it was just COVID and I was bored. And so I sat down and I started, writing. And the moment I sat down to do it, Jack's name came to me and the title of the book. And I was like, oh, that's okay, interesting. I'll write that down. Thank you very much.
Now, are you typing this or are you doing audio?
I'm typing it.
You're actually typing all that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So then I started type, and by the time I was done the second chapter, I'm like, wow, what is happening here? This is like writing a surfboard. Like there's no resistance. I'm just like flying through this story, and it's unspooling before me in the movie screen of my mind. I'm like, okay, I didn't know that's how was this supposed to go, but I then just kept going because I didn't know any difference. And what happened was that whole process was really like uncapping a fountain. And all of this information then suddenly started coming thundering through me to the point where I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. It was just like, and it was really kind of wrecking my life because I had no controls on what I was being shown and when I was being shown it. Right. And again, I don't know if that's my subconscious bringing this up for me. I don't know if it's something outside of myself. If I had to name what it is I channel source directly. I channel God.
It's really wild because, I mean, obviously I just read the book. So who puts the chapter titles in?
I do.
So you actually give it to the editor with all that in there?
Oh, the whole thing's written from beginning to end. All they do is fix the punctuation and publish it.
Wow. That's kind of a mind blower because it's a very intricate story.
It's a very intricate story.
It seems like, you'd be laboring over all this. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like it should have been.
Yeah. Well, Dale, this Dale right here is not involved in my writing. Like, I get myself out of the way. I'm the first thing to leave the room once I start writing. And so it's not allowing anything to get in my way, especially thought. And so it's free flow, right? I'm just taking notes of what I'm being shown.
Right. So if any of your former Baptist people are listening, they're saying, "Oh, he's demon possessed."
Probably.
Wow.
I don't know. But I learned so much from it. And I actually learned, like, the information about shamanism was something I was being shown before I ever took a class in it. And so I wrote an entire book on shamanism, never having taken a class. And so I found an editor who had their doctorate in shamanism. And I took my book to him. I'm like, okay, I don't understand what's happening here. I don't understand if this is like anything that makes any kind of sense. Like, can you just please explain what this is to me? Can you please explain what's happening to me and why I have this suddenly in my life? Because I mean, when I started writing, like I said, I wrote it in 6 weeks. I literally just vomited this book up, like, without any edits, without any changes, anything. And it still is the way that it is today. So he took it and he looked at it and he was like, yeah, this is it. He was like, you've never taken shamanism? I'm like, no, but I did have indigenous relatives. I did have indigenous relatives who were a big part of my family because they were being raised on a reservation in British Columbia and I was being raised more in like the city. And they had this nature-based life and I had this very, hardcore religious, upbringing. So shamanism and indigenous people have always held, I don't know, magic for me in my mind, I guess. I always kind of envisioned their lives being kind of more magical than mine was. And that really plays out in the work. But it's also, I think, what brought me to studying what the indigenous people knew and teach. It's fascinating. It's a complete paradigm shift from what we're doing in the Western world.
So to me, when I hear you say that, you're saying magic. The word that came to mind for me was connected.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah. Yeah. Like, even when you go and take classes in shamanism and you do like some kind of peripheral thing that you're not necessarily interested in or ever going to do, but the information is so on point, such as animal tracking. In my shaman class, we had to do a class in animal tracking. Okay. I mean, I own 5 acres and I've never tracked anything in my life, nor do I plan on. However, where they start from is the same place that they start with for everything. And that's connectivity, exactly what you said, right? It's them tapping in and them growing their personal being into the ethers and into the space, which then starts to exchange and inform them. So when you watch people animal tracking, they're being very quiet. They're really listening. And so much of what they do is based in listening. It's based in listening and learning and silence. And it's there that those people taught me that everything that I'm seeking is on the other side of stillness. And to really tap in, to really check in, and to understand and stand in the power that you know, and that you know, and that you understand what that feels like to inhabit something differently. right? And that's what's informing you, right?
Wow. So just briefly, so just give me a rundown on your books. Just talk about them quickly.
Sure. So I have two.
There's three in this series, right?
Yes, there's the trilogy with the black
That's your main
covers.
gig, right? Is that your main gig, right?
They're the real books. I have another series of little tiny novelettes that are all 100 pages long. That's called The Language and Light. And that's an interesting thing because it really chases the historical life of Nikolai Tesla, who is believed to be gay historically. And so it's a series told from his gay lover, who's part werewolf.
All righty.
Well, I wanted to explain. So my spirit animal is a wolf, and I wanted to write a relationship with a man and a wolf, and I wasn't sure how to do it in terms of like my spirit guide, and so I thought maybe making the character kind of part werewolf. He has some kind of those qualities would help the average Western mind understand my relationship with my spirit entity.
So, so what do you call that? The animal and your spirit. What do you call that? Your spirit.
Your spirit guide, your spirit animal, yeah.
Okay. How do you find out what yours is?
Well, there's a special ceremony that you have to do to go and meet your spirit animal. And we did that in shaman school. So I had like the official ceremony and everything. And it's quite powerful. I mean, it really is a game changer when you come face to face with your spirit guide and are able to see the world through their eyes, because ultimately that's what it is that we're trying to do with a spirit animal, is to tap into their way of seeing things, which is not the human mind.
So how would somebody like me find it?
Well, I mean, I could do it with you. I see people in shamanic sessions all the time, one-on-one or in groups, and we can just
I'd be
take you through.
curious.
Yeah, it's
What
a
is
really
my
fun process.
background? This is a stretch with my Christian background. It would be like, the old.
Yeah, and that's the thing about these things, is it really is beautiful and really so lovely and encouraging, and it really is to offer you support in your life so that you always feel, you never feel alone, and you can always look to somebody or something for guidance and input.
Oh, wow. All right, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
All right, so you've got the 100-page books.
Yeah,
You've
that's
got
the
these
language and
three,
light.
and what else?
So yeah, the language and light is the series that I use to really explain what is shamanism and how does that work as a practice, especially in overthrowing the government. Because back then in 1886, that was the first year that conversion therapy was ever coined as a term. And it's the same year that Nikolai Tesla left pre-Nazi Austria for America. And so you follow that whole trajectory of pre-Nazi Austria where conversion therapy is suddenly on the table. So it gets pretty, crazy. So that's the language and light, and then I have the trilogy, which you just held up. The book one is foreign to me, and book two is broken like me, and book three is made of me.
And it just continues Jack's journey on all three.
Well, yes. However, his love interest is also getting his own trilogy, which I'm excited about. So it's actually a 6-book series, 2 trilogies.
So Thad is coming into his own.
Yeah, Thad gets his own trilogy. It's fascinating. I have so much fun writing these.
It's funny reading the book though, because I of course really related to them, but I really fell in love with Jack and
Yeah.
Thad. It's kind of weird. I feel
Yeah.
like a teenage girl reading some romance novel,
Yeah.
but it really was cool.
Yeah. Well, Thad is based off of my husband and all of his character defects, and Jack is based off of me and all of my character defects.
Wow.
So if you want to know us as a couple, just read the book.
Wow. That's very cool. So that's coming up next.
Yes, I'm going to the LA Writers Convention on May 3rd, and I'm meeting with a bunch of literary agents. I'm currently pursuing representation. I'm hoping to get a literary agent this year because I've kind of really gone as far as I can with just being self-published, right? And it's really time for me to leverage all the success, especially of Journey of a Dark Shaman, which won International Book Festival, and placed in a bunch of awards and stuff like this, being turned into a movie by someone at the LA Times. Like, I've done as much as I can to bring myself along, and now it's time to go get myself an agent. So that's where I'm at.
So you're going to a writer's, you want to meet the literary agents, but there's also it's like a conference of writers.
Yes, it's a full day conference. And while the conference is great, the main reason to go is because you can get face to face time with literary agents, which otherwise is very, very difficult to do.
Well, it begs the question. I mean, do you tell them how you write? Because the other writers that are spending 4 years writing a book are just going to be pissed off.
Yeah. I don't tell them how I,
Okay,
write the book. I
good.
don't tell them my process. Yeah, I just let the work speak for itself.
Okay, good move, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, it's that guy.
Yeah. That weirdo.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So if we get to the point where I ask you a final question,
Okay.
what have you learned in your life? What do you now?
Right now, I live by the fact that there's no good, there's no bad, there's no right, there's no wrong. There just is. And there's just people doing their people things. And I do not have to engage with that unless I feel called to. I also feel like we can't necessarily sometimes help without creating additional chaos in the world. I believe that justice is one of those examples, that justice is just a better name for revenge. And that if we all really truly want peace, we need to start being peaceful. And
Right.
we've forgotten. And we all live in the ego mind where everybody's trying to fix and fight all day long, and no one's being peaceful. Again, in order to have peace, we ourselves must be peaceful. Disengage, disconnect, stop with the justice causes. If it has to burn, let it burn. That's not you. Stay home. Stay focused. Stay where you are. Stay with what is peaceful and stay with what because you know, right? And the only place that you can actually help in this world is right here and right now. And any association beyond that is chaos.
Yeah, I get it. I posted on social media on one of the platforms a while back because I just came to this where it was like I told what was going on with me. I said I've stopped watching news, like
Mm-hmm.
cold turkey stopped,
Yeah.
and I'm just to me, I think the best thing we can do is just be the light
Yeah.
right
Be
now.
a way shower.
Yeah,
Show the way forward.
because when I've got I won't name the friends of course, but I've got one friend that probably does about 10 posts a day about all of the, with Trump and all the
Right.
stuff. I don't even like saying his name, but I didn't name her, but I just said, when we do that, when we fill our whole day with that,
Yeah.
the whole darkness and the all that energy is feeding. We're feeding them
Yeah.
by contributing to that. And it's like, nope, not going to do it.
Yeah.
And people didn't agree with me. Well, you got to do da da da. Well,
You actually don't. You don't have to do anything, especially anything that involves anything that is associated with toxic energy.
right,
Like that has to be the new smoking. Toxic energy has to be the new smoking. We cannot allow that on either side. Stop adjudicating things whether they're good or bad or right and wrong. Because they're
right,
not none of those things. None of those things exist outside of your own personal ego. Let's start assessing things whether it's loving or whether it's toxic, not whether
right,
it's right or wrong.
right. Well, I mean, the battle rages on right now, but
Yes.
I'm just doing my part.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, sir. This has been fun.
Yes, much appreciated.
We'll have the link to all your stuff and
Yeah, including we didn't even talk about the plant medicine stuff that I'm starting to do now with Merkaba. Yeah, it's really interesting. If you go to my social media, you'll see all the plant medicine retreats that we're now offering, which is really hard to come by in Southern California. So merkabaretreats.com.
okay. So we'll do that link and we'll let it go for that. Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks for coming over.
You bet.
See ya.
Bye.